Welcome to the Working Tools podcast, where today we'll be discussing the article, The Right Size and Future for Masonry, from the Fourth Rite blog.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
I am Matthew Appel. I'm a Mason here at Mill Creek Lodge in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And today I'm joined by two of the three other hosts. We have Worshipful Brother Jarrod Dunham, who's a past master. No, he's not. He's a member of Penticton number 147, but he is not a past master of Penticton. He's a past master of somewhere else. So, and David Colbeth, who I don't know, I've gotten myself in deep enough now that I'm just going to say it's David Colbeth from King Solomon number 60 in Auburn, Washington. And the three of us are going to discuss an article, the title of which is The Right Size and Future for Masonry, which is from a blog called Fourth Rite. The author just lists himself as Fourth Writer, so I'm not sure. I don't know who he is, but he's got several interesting articles about Masonry and the future of Masonry that we looked over. So there's this one, The Right Size and Future for Masonry, and then there's an update to it, both of which I'm sure we will wander back and forth across in our usual way in our conversation. I wanted to actually ask a question of the Canadian guys before we get too far, because I always mean to ask. So all these graphs with the MSANA data of how many Masons there are in Washington and that are in the US and that sort of stuff are always in the US. I'm assuming the Canadian membership levels are similar, like there's a big bump after World War II and then it tails off and now things are lower than they used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Your understanding?
Yeah. When I plotted the membership numbers for our Grand Lodge up here in BC, it is the exact same line. It goes, you get the spike at the beginning of the century, it goes up, peaks just before World War I, takes a dip, goes up in the 20s, peaks in the 30s, takes a dip until about 45, spikes to the early 60s, and then plummets. So yeah. It's
Steady,
I assume
steady
that was
decline.
the case, but
okay.
You know what
steady
happens
decline.
Steady decline. So yeah, I just, like I said, I assumed that was the case, but when I start assuming things, that's when I get myself in trouble. So I guess what are your general thoughts on the article? Do you have something spring to mind immediately?
Well, I'll add on to my steady decline comment, and that it was a pretty rapid increase after World War II. And so it was a rapid increase, I would say, not even just a steady increase. And then it didn't drop quite as fast, of course, because those people stayed around. The men kept paying their dues, whether they were attending or part of things or not. I don't know. I wasn't around in the 70s. So I don't know how Masonry.
You weren't around in the 70s?
In Masonry. Oh. Well, I was pretty new in the 70s. But even then, I remember talking to some of the past masters about their experience. What was Lodge like when they were masters? And at those times in the 60s, even as it was still declining, but certainly in the 50s, in the 60s and 70s, their whole business was just making Masons, that they were just so busy making new Masons, making members. It was degrees after degrees after degrees. And it was just a machine. It was a churning. And so not that it's an excuse, but I think they got lost. There were some aspects of them getting lost in the idea of that's what Masonry was. You make Masons. Yes, it's what we do, of course, but it's not really what we do. What do we do? Maybe that's a good question.
Well, and I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'll continue to say it. That influx of membership after World War II is the worst thing to happen to Freemasonry because of that. Is that when you're spending your entire time initiating new members and everything, you don't have time to do the actual work that you need to do as a Mason that is required of us.
That's actually the two of you just used the different words for the same thing, and that's were they making David said they were making Masons, and you said they were increasing or they're gaining new members. And that would be my question would be, were they making Masons or were they making members?
Members.
That's a very different, not very different, but it's a different thing.
You're absolutely right.
Well, are you?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Well, no, because the problem is that, okay, so I guess my question now becomes, this is, wow, tangent number one. What do you define as like, if you're not, when you're passing people through the degrees, you are not making a Mason, what are you then technically doing?
Well, Matt's got the contemplative thought. I'll let him go.
Well, I'm just getting that. Let's give him a second.
So I guess, I mean, how to phrase this? Technically, I would argue completely, the guy has once you finish your first degree, I would say you are a Mason. You are a Freemason. That's what we say during the ritual, right? So anyway, you are a Mason. Now, I guess I would argue that there are Masons who are card-carrying members who are Masons, and then there are Masons who are striving to improve themselves and being part of things and etc. who are what is he doing with the magic 8-ball? Was my answer that bad? Signs point to no.
It says it is certain.
There are Masons out there who are members, and there are Masons out there who are doing the work of Masonry. And I guess that's the distinction that I'm making.
Right. It's sort of the same thing as I have a friend who loves to say, there are some guys who have 1 year of experience 20 times, and there are people who have 20 years of experience. So if you're doing, and I agree that, but you're still technically making Masons. So now we're starting to get, by your definition, now we're going to start getting into the good and bad definitions of Masons. Are they a good Mason? Or are they a bad Mason?
That does get problematic fast. I will agree with you on that one.
Yeah, but I mean, but with that, but I think that's the point that David and I were trying to make, is that when you have such an influx of people into your lodge, you don't have time to all you have is time to make them Masons. You don't have time to teach them how to be what being a Mason is and how to improve on that. And that's where that is why I think the decline happened, and why we're struggling now with our own identity as Freemasons. Because I know quite often I keep thinking to myself, what is the purpose of this organization that we belong to?
Well, I think we could look at the article. The article makes a good connection, which I would agree with the Scottish Rite, the Path Forward program, right? They talk about what attracts non-Masons to the idea of Masonry. And I highlighted almost the whole thing. And I'm absolutely going to incorporate some of these ideas into our 6 steps, and also into reminding our members, and especially the new people, why are we here? What are we here for? And of course, ask them, why are they seeking Masonry? But some of the ideas, just very quickly, 79% of the respondents would be interested in joining an organization that enables them to become a better person while helping to improve the quality of life for others. It's a pretty good thing, isn't it? Now, there's lots of, I'm not talking about, there's lots of other aspects. We'll get there. We'll get there. But in general, isn't that one of the main things that we're supposed to make men better? Right. And so we say, well, we don't really make men better. It's just the idea, the osmosis of being around other guys. And we don't really have a way to say how we make good men better. But I think that's a good way to say it, that
what we do.
What is it, Jarrod?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going through my mind to try and figure out how much I can actually say.
Ritual. He's going to say the ritual.
Well, yeah. Well, well, it's just because, I've been really working through the ritual lately. I've been really working through my steps lately. But no pun intended. But but we
Yeah, well-
do have like we because we emphasize the educating ourselves.
Yeah, and again, going back to this, we're a values-based organization, and where they want to become part of, and we emphasize fraternity, integrity, compassion, and becoming a better man. And they also emphasize that experience has to be real and ongoing and genuine once they join. And so, while we are not a social organization, there has to be a social aspect to it,
Mhm.
and that you need to make deep and connections with the members, or at least maybe not all members, but you don't make deep connections with everybody either. But there could be the opportunity for that. We've had at some of our social nights on the fourth Thursday that afterwards, the last 2 months afterwards, two or three guys that stay afterwards, we've had some it's almost incredible how heavy some of the conversations have been about their current personal life and how things are affecting them, and they're glad that Masonry is here and available to them, and so glad that we had this conversation. And it was just an interesting and unique opportunity that you wouldn't normally get, for sure not in a lodge or in a regular meeting, because they're not going to open up that way. But I think as I was reading the article, I thought, why aren't we having some of these hard discussions in a small group, 4 or 5, even 10 guys? Why aren't we having these discussions? Because I think we don't want to, I think we're afraid to open up to each other. And isn't that one of the things that we're supposed to be about, is the openness and ability to have conversations, those difficult conversations about how we're feeling and what's going on, how we can help each other, and even just a sounding board.
I think the stumbling block on that would be the makeup of your lodge, because people, like, if your lodge skews older, I'm not saying that they don't tend to open up, but as you age, you forget what it's like to be younger. And so, and the problem, and actually studies have shown this, that as you age, when you look back on your life, you tend to remember the happier memories than the tougher ones. So that it may be more, with an older lodge, it may be more difficult to have these conversations, simply because the older Masons just cannot relate to it. And so I think you're lucky that you might have enough younger members that you guys can get together and sort of support each other that way.
Yeah, it seems, I would argue actually that it's not just that they're older or younger, but that they're of similar, I don't know what the word is, experience, age bracket.
Socioeconomic
Similar,
background.
like a half dozen 75-year-old guys and a half dozen 35-year-old guys could each have that conversation. It might be more difficult across the generational lines. If you had guys who have an affinity, even if it's not age, if they were all cops and they can reminisce about their cop days and talk about, use that as their starting point, then you could probably have these conversations. That's
what was unique about this experience, was that the first month, 2 months ago, it happened. Yes, one of the guys was probably my age. I don't know exactly for sure how old he is, but I think he's about my age. And which I'm, no surprise. You can look me up. Probably I'm 50. So, but then the other guy, but we're different socioeconomic and cultural background. We're different. And then the third guy that was there, completely brand new Master Mason. He might be just a little older than us, honestly. So I guess we happen to be similar age, but he is absolutely different socioeconomic background and cultural background completely. And so it was interesting to see that happen. But after the meeting, I was the old guy, and there was a younger, I think he's probably in his 30s, maybe mid 30s. And then there was a young man, I think he was in his 20s. And then there was another guy there, I don't remember who that was now. But the young man was just opened up and was talking about how, I was a little concerned because he was talking about how he needs Masonry, he thinks Masonry is going to change him. So a little bit concerned about that idea, but also thought, oh man, at least he's willing to open up. And he was tearful and compassionate. And I thought, again, initially my heart went out to him, and then I became fearful. Are we going to be able to provide this guy with guidance and what he thinks we can give him? And I was scared. It almost scared me to think, can we really help him? And I know we're not saviors, but
Well, I would argue that you being able to freely admit what you just said to him would help him, because it would help him to realize that maybe he's putting maybe it isn't as drastic as you think, but if it is, at least he would have an honest answer to, this may not be the solution you're looking for.
Well, and I did gently allude that, but he retorted pretty quickly to say that so there's no magic sauce. There's no magic sauce in Masonry. We're not, you're not going to drink the Kool-Aid and all of a sudden become a better man. And it was, didn't happen right after he cried. That was, but he said, he kind of came back right away and said, I think there is some magic sauce. And he helped me to understand that what we were doing, not this, but with that night, is kind of the magic sauce, and the ability to have conversations and the ability to have people that he can look to for guidance, and the idea of fraternity, integrity, compassion, and becoming a better man. And those, we do kind of have a magic sauce.
We're just jaded because we've been around for a while.
I think so. I think we might be.
I know there was not to recommend a competing podcast or anything, but Juan Sepulveda does the Winding Stairs podcast, and he said in his early episodes, one of the reasons why he started it was that he was looking, when he joined the lodge, he heard these, making good men better, that sort of thing, and that he expected when he became a Master Mason that then the meeting was going to be, oh, let's discuss how, I ended up in this situation, how do you think I should deal with it, and that sort of thing, and it wasn't. It was still buying paint and changing light bulbs. And so that was one of the reasons why he ended up going out and finding making his own Masonic education in life plan scheme, because he wasn't finding what he wanted in lodge.
It made me think after when I was reading this and learned. I guess I know I had read the Path Forward program before, and I just didn't click at the time. But now I'm thinking, we do a Shrink the Lodge segment where it's in Masonic education, where we get together, we go off session or to refreshment and allow freely move. We come together in a round circle, all on one level, nobody knows, no second row, so we can have this discussion. Generally it's about education, but now I'm thinking maybe we need to have a manly man talk or something, some kind of element of personal growth or development in that piece too. That
this meeting of the He-Man Woman Haters Club is called to order.
I don't know. You're right. I mean, it struck me to think, are we being looked at, especially by the younger guys, or at least for sure the newer guys, are we being looked at as the role models, and are we a good role model necessarily? But also, you have to have new guys to be looked at, right? If you don't have new members coming in, now we don't have a ton of new members. I'm a little bit fearful for a particular local lodge. I won't say the name, but they have a ton of people coming in. I think they've made 12 or 15 new Masons this year. And they're, in my view, I don't know this to be fact, but in my view, they're not making Masons, they're making members. And yes, you're right. They are Masons, but what is the process? I know the guys that used to help the new members become Masons and work through education pieces and work through proficiencies and work through those kind of things, they have aged beyond the ability. And so the new guys that were being taught haven't taken up the mantle necessarily to take on that role, to be the mentor, to make Masons out of members. So I'll be curious to see what the next 5 years brings there.
And so it sort of gets back to the article a bit. So we talk about the right size and future for Masonry is the title of the article. And if is there some, we need some influx of members to be, maybe we don't, maybe we just make ourselves better. And if no one else ever heeds the call, I guess it's on some level, I kind of think of it like religion, which I know I shouldn't, but like, if you are a member of a religion and you think you have, well, in my opinion, a path, but in some people's opinion, the path to a higher state of being, and you think you've got the secret, you've got the secret sauce, then you want to spread it around, right? You want to evangelize, for instance, and bring more people to light, right? Is that not? I don't know. I think this goes back to the conversation about, does every town need a lodge or not, and that sort of thing too.
And as I was thinking about these small groups, again, our shrink the lodge concept and having how to break into these heartfelt conversations, I was thinking about my upbringing in Bible studies when we had, we'd go into somebody's house and you'd have, your cookies and whatever, coffee, and you'd have this intimate, you go to a service and you'd have lots of people at the church or whatever, and it's an informal gathering. And so it's hard to get those close connections, but then they'd usually have a Bible study or some kind of a small group event where you could start to make those connections and really open up potentially. And so that's what I related in my mind. Maybe that's what we need to have in Masonry, is to say, hey guys, come on over tonight. We're going to talk about something, and have those in our houses rather than at the lodges, and develop those personal connections and have these discussions about integrity and compassion and making each of us a better man. We could do it at a lodge too, maybe, but it's not as intimate.
I think what this all boils down to is expecting more from our current membership, and holding them accountable to that. When you have a lodge that's been around for a while and is mainly members that have been around for a while, who quite often say, but that's the way we've always done it. It's hard to be the new person that comes in and says, but why can't we do it a different way?
And loosely, that relates to one of the messages that doesn't resonate. The message that resonates the least. Did you catch that one?
Yeah.
The historical ties in its relationship to the nation's founding fathers. we tout that, at least in the US, we tout that so much. I think, how is that relevant? We haven't had found a Mason in prominent stature for years, for decades. Why do we keep talking about that?
I actually tried to. We had a list. We used to go to like the fair and have a booth and whatever. We had a booth at the fair, and that was one of the things that was on there, was like the list of prominent Freemasons, and it was always George Washington and Ben Franklin and whatever. So I tried to update the list once with modern day prominent Masons. So there's a handful out there. There's Shaquille O'Neal and there's a race car driver, and there's a country music guy, and there's a handful of them out there. But yeah, it's definitely more work than it used to be.
Well, sure. And is it important?
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, should I care that some famous person happened to have gone through the 3 degrees? Are they a Mason? Like, this one always goes back to, because I love how many times U.S. Masons bring up the number of presidents that are Masons. But in my opinion, and I think I've said this before, the only one that you guys should really bring up is Harry Truman, because he's the only one that actually put the work in and became Grand Master, and then would go to lodge meetings while he was president. Like, so he was a Freemason. He still did the work.
Yeah. Well, just like the article has kind of an abrupt ending. Maybe it
does. I noticed that as well.
I highlighted the line and said abrupt ending. I said, but I highlighted because the craft doesn't need saving, and I think we would probably all nod and agree that we probably don't necessarily need saving. It's just going back to other articles we've done, other shows. It's not dying; it's just refining.
Yeah, it's right sizing.
And I would argue that so listing founding fathers for the sake of having founding fathers on a list is one thing, but saying that whatever I don't know, pick your favorite famous Freemason, was a great person, and he was kind, and he worked well with other people, and he helped people who were below him, and he succeeded because of his work ethic, and et cetera, et cetera. That is an advertisement isn't the right word there, but an advertisement for Masonry, as opposed to we were the power brokers back in the good old days kind of thing, which is not, in my opinion.
And I think if people really
Sorry,
analyze the idea of the power broker idea, or the powerful people or whatever in communities, it was those people that kind of had to do that because there weren't services. There wasn't necessarily, in some cases, a government institution, medical services, charitable. Insurance was a big thing, I guess. I keep hearing about this, but I didn't live 100 years ago, so I don't know what insurance, but supposedly you could get insurance through the Freemasonry somehow. And so there was these services that weren't available in Freemasonry. And I would guess because of the prominent people that were part of it provided some of these services. And so maybe, again, wasn't so much even that it wasn't that they were in Freemasonry to be prominent. It was that they were prominent and happened to be in Freemasonry because that was the channel, the avenue of distribution, or a central. It was the core of the community.
And I don't know that I've ever heard about Masonry having insurance. I mean, maybe at some point we did, but I know I've heard many stories of whatever Brother Smith broke his leg and couldn't plow his field, and so the local lodge turned up and plowed his field and helped his wife and whatever. And that's, I mean, it's not insurance, but it's insurance of a sort. So on that note, unless anyone wants to buy an insurance policy from me, on behalf of Jarrod and David and myself and the absent Steve, thank you all for listening tonight to our discussion of the right size and future for Masonry from the Fourth Rite blog. And also, by the way, we really appreciate, David found, I'll have to admit it was him, a whole bunch of comments on YouTube that were really cool and were interesting to respond to and have little discussions about. And we really dig that sort of thing. So if you guys have any comments or thoughts, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, please check it out. And as much as we like to talk here, we like to talk on those things too. So please feel free to comment and let us know. So on that note, thank you for listening to the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.